to another episode of the All Yellow Jackets podcast. Here, episode 7. I am your host, Jackson Caudell, publisher of AllYellowJackets.com, and we're coming to you on recording on Thursday evening. You'll get this podcast just a little bit later, but it's time to preview the big game this weekend. Georgia Tech goes to Wake Forest. These two teams, now that they're permanent rivals with the new ACC scheduling format, they're going to be playing each other every season. They actually hadn't played in a while. The last time they played was 2017, I believe. Georgia Tech won that game. They haven't been to Winston-Salem in 2010. And the last time Wake Forest beat Georgia Tech was a game everybody remembers, 2006 ACC title game. Wake Forest won that game 9-6. Two different teams right now. One, Georgia Tech is trying to build into the consistent kind of program that Wake is, and that was something that Brent Key talked about this week. But we'll get more into that, obviously. If you're watching this on YouTube, would greatly appreciate a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, make sure you know whenever I got videos up, when I go live, anything like that, make sure to do that. If you're listening on podcast form, be sure to leave. If it's 1-star review, that's fine. If it's 5-star review, that's even better. But make sure to leave a review. Tell me how I'm doing. Tell me how you guys like this and the things I can do better, because this is for you guys. I want to make sure I'm making the best content available to you guys, and it's been awesome so far. Hopefully it goes better than last week. Hopefully that's the case. So we'll dive in a little bit, talking Wake Forest personnel, the things they do well on offense, the things they do well defensively, and what to expect from this game. Because the first point I kind of want to hit on is how big this game is. And look, you can tell me, even if they lose this game, there are still games out there. You got Bowling Green, Boston College, Virginia. But if you lose that game, that gets you 3 more wins, which would get you to 4. You need 2 more for bowl eligibility, and you would need to win 2 out of a road game at Miami, who looks very good right now, a home game against North Carolina, who also looks good, but Georgia Tech has had success against, Syracuse, who I don't know what to think about Syracuse right now, because they look really good and they have played maybe the worst schedule in the country up to this point. I mean, they've beaten Colgate, Western Michigan, and they beat Purdue last week. And then they get Army this week, so we're still really not going to know how good Syracuse is. But that game's also in Atlanta. And then the two behemoths at the end of the schedule, Clemson and Georgia. Those are going to – getting 2 wins out of that is going to be very, very difficult. And, again, nothing's impossible. This team could see a great bit of improvement and upset a couple of those teams. You saw it last year when they beat Pitt and North Carolina. But if you have to rely on that, it's generally not the best. So I really do think that this is – I hate saying must-win game, 4th game of the season, but just seeing how tough the rest of the schedule is, I really do think you're bordering on a must-win game against a team that I think they might be better than. Like, obviously the Georgia Tech defense leaves a lot to be desired right now, but I still don't know how good Wake Forest is. And I guess let's dive into that. So up to this point, Wake Forest is 3-0. And like I was just saying about Syracuse, they have played absolutely nobody right now. They started off the season with a win against Elon, and then they beat Vanderbilt, and then they were down big to Old Dominion last week. They got down. They were able to come back. Their defense was able to get it together, and they had 10 sacks last week. They really got after the quarterback, and that's the first thing that really jumps off the page to me is they lead the ACC in sacks right now with 16, and a lot of it is 2 players, Jacob Roberts, Jasheen Davis. They account for 9.5 of those sacks right now. Like they both, like, to put this into context, they both lead the nation in sacks right now. So you can now that could just be Old Dominion is not any good. That is a totally realistic scenario. And again, they lost to Virginia Tech. That's how bad they are. They actually lost to a really bad Virginia Tech team. But this game is pretty borderline must win to me. The spread opened at Wake Forest -8. It is all the way down. It got as low as 3, which tells you a lot. Look, I'm not a gambling expert. Don't ever take my advice as some expert on this. But that would seem to indicate that a lot of backing has gone into Georgia Tech, and I can see why. Like, Georgia Tech is Wake Forest's head coach Dave Clawson said it best this week. Georgia Tech could easily be 2-1 at the worst right now. Not trying to dredge up bad memories, but the Louisville game, if you have certain things go your way there, that's a win. The Ole Miss game, I'm a little if like I don't know that they ever really had a shot to win the game, but the fact that it was a one touchdown game in the fourth quarter does signal that like they hung around with what I think is a pretty good Ole Miss team, and we'll see how good they are this weekend when they go to Alabama. A win there would make Georgia Tech look pretty good because the score. I, I said this a lot on the previous podcast, but the final score was not indicative of how that game was played. It was a pretty close game, and then things just kind of got bonkers at the end, and the defense was not playing well, but it totally collapsed in the bottom half of the fourth quarter. So, gonna need to cut that out this week. Like they have to. They've done decent in the first half of games. Like Louisville only scored 13 points. Ole Miss only scored 10. Although you had some missed opportunities by Ole Miss there, a missed field goal and then a pass breakup in the goal line, but the second half adjustments are going to have to be a lot better on the defensive side. And you're going against a team offensively that is usually pretty good. Like Sam Hartman was there for a really, really long time. Sam Hartman has been there so long. He's still playing. Like he's not at Wake Forest. He's playing in a big game of his own on Saturday night when Notre Dame takes on Wake Forest. And he was a great quarterback there for many years. Before him, you had Jamie Newman before he transferred to Georgia. That Dave Clawson has done a really good job with quarterbacks there. And right now, I wouldn't put Mitch Griffis up on that pedestal because, look, I think Sam Hartman is one of the 10 best quarterbacks in college football. Jamie Newman was really good. There's a reason Kirby Smart took him at Georgia, even though he wound up never playing. But quarterback-wise, they do a really good job with development. And, the stats aren't going to blow you away. Like Griffis was throwing for 837 yards, 62% of his passes complete, 8 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. The thing that stands out the most to me is he's been sacked 10 times. They are near the bottom of the country in tackles for loss and sacks allowed. And I can already see it now. Like you'll say, well, Jackson, do you know that Georgia Tech has only 1 sack all year and is ranked near the bottom of the nation in tackles for loss? And yes, I do. But if they're gonna be able to create some havoc and get in the backfield and create negative plays, like Brent Key has talked about trying to improve from week to week, like this is a week to do that. If I'll say this, I'm already very, very concerned and disturbed by this defense so far, especially in the front seven and run defense. If they cannot get any pressure, create any havoc against Wake Forest, I don't know what to tell you. Like this is a team you should be able to do this on. And you look at Wake Forest success rate on the offensive side, 33.8% passing success rate, which is 97th in the country. And for anybody that doesn't know about success rate or some of the advanced stats there, it's basically just how good are they passing the ball on a down-to-down basis. They're 97th in the country. Like you would expect that to be better, especially against the schedule they've played and with the receiving weapons that they have, but it hasn't really come to fruition yet. The offense, that they have big playability at the running back position. Damon Claiborne, 269 yards, 5.4 average, has 1 touchdown. Very good player, like just a very good player, and they're going to be explosive in the ground game, and that's what worries me going into this game is the amount. Like their backup running back he's averaging 9 yards per carry. Their third string guy, I'll say third in terms of yards. Justice Ellison has 113 yards. Been a good player so far this year. So their backs, if you can't tackle them, they're going to be able to move the ball down the field. And I think that's just what I hate repeating myself from week to week, but just the ability to tackle and get those guys on the ground and force Griffiths into obvious passing situations, like that's how you set up defensive success in this game. It's true. So he turned the ball over a couple times last week. I'll say that as well. He threw 2 interceptions. Now, it's his only 2 interceptions of the year, I'm fairly certain. So I don't know how turnover prone he is. Like Sam Hartman was not a real turnover prone guy, except he would have certain games where he would throw 4 interceptions and then he would go the next 5 without throwing them. I don't know if it's just some of the offense. I don't know if it's just separate quarterbacks. I don't know. They also run a very unique system on offense. I'm not sure how many of y'all have watched Wake Forest a lot under Dave Clawson, seeing as how they don't play tech all that often. But they run a very slow mesh system. You see, it's a little bit like a zone read. He'll keep it. Sometimes he'll just pull it out and then throw the ball quickly. Sometimes he'll keep it, and take it. They have probably the longest mesh point in college football. It's kind of tough to defend, especially if you don't play it all that often, and not a lot of teams run that kind of style of offense. So you're just gonna have. It's just gonna have to be being prepared for it. And like I don't know my confidence level in that. Andrew Thacker has not done a very good job this year, especially with second half adjustments. Like, okay, maybe Tech stops them a little bit in the first half, but we've seen in the second half of games against Louisville, they scored 20 something odd points. Ole Miss, they scored a lot of points. A lot of that came at the end. Like I've already said my piece on that, but um, yeah, being able to defend that stuff is going to be a challenge for this defense, and just being disciplined. And that's where I worry. Like, is this defense disciplined to read their keys and be able to come up against this offense? We'll see. Like, they're starting to play more linebackers now. I think they're trying to find guys to those positions, but nobody's really stepped up and taken a hold of the mantle, much like we've seen Charlie Thomas and Ace Ely do in years past. Like, still looking for a little bit of clarity at that position, but this wide receiver core is pretty deep and pretty good. I'll say that. Jamal Banks, I voted him first team All ACC in the preseason. He's playing pretty well. 18 catches, 223 yards, only averaging 12.4 yards per catch. Like he's not like a amazing deep threat gonna get you. He has caught 3 touchdowns as well. Taylor Morin, 12 catches, 176 yards, 14.7 average, 2 touchdowns. Wesley Grimes, he on paper looks to be the deep threat. 8 catches, 172 yards, 21.5 yards per catch. That's pretty good. And a touchdown. Keyshawn Williams is also a dangerous guy. 11 catches, 153 yards, 13.6 yards per catch, and a touchdown as well. So they have to be able to get pressure and disrupt Griffiths. You know, I say that every week. It's a key for any defense looking to stop what's a pretty well coached offense and has some firepower. But it's especially true this week because Wake Forest offense, a lot of it is just timing and knowing where they're going to go with the ball. And if you disrupt that, you can get turnover plays that Griffiths has shown he's capable of giving you if you're disruptive enough. But if you let them get in rhythm and just let their offense start cooking, it's going to be tough. Offensive line, I'm not impressed with Wake Forest offensive line. Like, it's not a personal shot at anybody, but like they don't really impress me up front all that much. But it's also the fact that like I don't know if Georgia Tech's defensive line is anything to. It hasn't shown its disruptive capabilities so far. So we'll be able. This is a real good test to see what they're made of. But they hit on big plays pretty well. Like especially running the football. So that's a key concern of mine. Throwing the football, they on a down-to-down basis, they haven't been great. They, but this is a Georgia Tech defense that hasn't been very good and did allow some explosive plays in the fourth quarter. So we'll see what they're made of. Going to the defensive side of the ball, Wake Forest has not been very good on the defensive side under Dave Clawson, really since Mike Elko, who's doing a tremendous job as the head coach at Duke right now. They haven't been great or very consistent on that side of the ball so far. You look at the stats; they're middle of the pack defensively. 324.7 yards per game allowed. They've allowed 61 points so far this year, just about over 20 per game. You also have to take into account who they're playing, like Elon, Vanderbilt, and Old Dominion last week. They have not. Vanderbilt is probably by far the best offense they've played, and Vanderbilt was able to do a little bit with them. But still, I don't think that they've seen an offense that is this talented. Like Haynes King, he leads the ACC in passing right now in terms of yardage. The running game is still top 5 in the ACC, although it could be a little bit better, especially on like a down-to-down basis. Like that's a not a concern I have, but like Georgia Tech ran the ball 47 times last week and only averaged a little bit under 4 yards per carry. So that's going to have to be something that's addressed this week, and hopefully they can get it going. The pass rush is what stands out to you about Wake Forest. Obviously, they have the 2 leading sack getters in the country right now, and for lack of a better term, that's the one I use. So Jacob Roberts, 21 tackles, 5 sacks. Jasheen Davis, 18 tackles, 4.5 sacks. Like, they really got after it last week. And again, that could just be a product of Old Dominion being like terrible up front. Because in the first 2 games, Elon and Vanderbilt, it wasn't as dominant. But anytime you get 10 sacks, it's hard to follow that up or say you had a better performance than that. So we'll see what they have this week. So Chase Lane, he's not going to be able to play this week. Brent Key was talking about that a little bit. He's going to be there, but it's going to be an emergency situation only. But that's going to give more opportunity for guys like Eric Singleton Jr. Like he leads the team in receiving right now. He has 3 touchdowns as well. So we'll be able to see if he can continue a streak. I want to see if he can get a touchdown in every game he plays this year. He's gotten 3 so far. So we'll be able to see what he does. Obviously Malik Rutherford, Christian Leary, Dominic Blaylock. It's kind of wide receiver by committee. So they're really going to be able to test this Wake Forest defense. And when you look at their advanced numbers, like they're 105th in passing success rate allowed, 37.4%. A little bit better rushing defense, 56, 33.7 success rate allowed. And that's where Georgia Tech can get them. Like they have obviously been able to throw the ball really well. They're 40th in passing success rate at 37.3. And if they're able to be on a down-to-down basis pretty consistent throwing the football, I think they're going to have a very good chance to win this game. And it's obviously a big part of that is pass protection. Like this is going to be another big test for Ethan McKinney, the true freshman. And he didn't play bad last week, but obviously, a true freshman on the road against a pretty good Ole Miss defensive line. Like there were concerns there last week, but he was able to hold up. The interior of the offensive line has still been pretty good, and Jordan Williams played pretty good out at right tackle last week. So we're I think the offensive line is really gelled together. They're still allowing pressures. Like they've only allowed 3 sacks, but teams are still able to get pressure pretty consistently on Tech's offense, and that's something that I do think they're going to have to get a little bit better at. It's something to improve upon. Now, in terms of running the football, like I said earlier, Tech is 83rd in rushing success rate, which, again, just a down-to-down basis, how good they are running the football and getting the yardage that they need to be successful on first, second, third down. 34% success rate, 83rd in the country. Wake Forest is very middle of the pack in being able to stop the run. I think it's going to be a chance for Jamal Haynes or Trey Cooley to really have an opportunity to break runs in this game. So we'll see what they can do. Dante Smith didn't play last week. We'll see if he can get in on the action. But I do think, how the offensive line holds up in pass protection against 2 really good pass rushers in Roberts and Davis, and if they are able to really beat them over the top deep. Because, like I said, Wake Forest secondary has not been very good up to this point in the season. Like, it's been very okay, and they haven't even played the best teams on their schedule. Like, they still play really good offenses the rest of the way. So I'm anxious to see if Georgia Tech, a sign that you're improving as a team is going out and doing the things you're supposed to be good at against teams that aren't good at stopping it. Like, I don't all of a sudden want to see a bad passing game against a bad passing defense and being unable to do anything, because that's going to spell trouble. So keeping the turnovers low, hitting explosive plays, and keeping Haynes King as clean as possible. That doesn't just mean no sacks. Don't let pressures, because Wake Forest isn't very good defensively, I think, but they do have certain players that can be very disruptive, as you saw last week. So I think those are the keys to the game on the offensive side of the ball. And then defensively, I'm going to say it till I'm blue in the face, just tackle well, because they have explosive players both on the perimeter and in the running game, and then being able to disrupt Griffiths. Like, he has been sacked 10 times, and Wake Forest has given up 10 sacks against 3 teams that they're not very good. So on paper, they should be able to do a little bit better than either Elon, Vanderbilt, or Old Dominion did, and hopefully have better success and create some turnovers and get yourself good field position. And also this week, be better in the red zone. Like we talked about it a little bit on Tuesday. Missing red zone opportunities or scoring opportunities once you get inside opponent territory, like, you got to cash those in. You can't have a blocked field goal. You cannot have a drop on 4th and goal from the 2. Those were 2 big swing plays early on. It really set the tone, and Georgia Tech was unable to catch back up and get back in it. Or get back in it fully. I know they cut it to a touchdown, but still. And special teams, like, that's just, they've had a special teams miscue in some way, shape, or form in every game, whether it's been a missed field goal or, like last week, it's a blocked field goal that allowed Ole Miss to get all the way back down the field in Georgia Tech territory and then score. You cannot give – now Wake Forest is not as good as Ole Miss, but if you give any team easy scoring opportunities, like, it's just going to – you're going to put yourself in a hole, and you might not be able to get back out of it, and they weren't last week. So I think those are the keys to the game, so to speak. Players to watch – I'm very anxious to see the offensive line as a whole this week. You're going up against the 2 leading sack getters in the country, in Roberts and Davis, who have combined for nearly 10 already. Like, that's an impressive number. I don't care who you're playing, whether you're talking about Ethan McKinney, Jordan Williams, Connor Scaglione, any of them. seeing how they do against this defensive front, because I'm sure they're going to do a lot of things to try to confuse them. I wouldn't be surprised if they blitz a fair amount either to try to disrupt this quick game. Like Georgia Tech lives off the quick game early and sets up for shots deep. You saw that Jamal Haynes got a lot of touches early. Eric Singleton catches a 51-yard pass over the top deep later. So I'm anxious to see how Buster Faulkner draws some of that up and if it's a similar approach, if he just tries to go deep early. I know it's kind of cheating using the offensive line as players to watch, but I do think offensively that they're going to be the big success, the big key to the game, because I'm at the point where I trust Haynes King and these playmakers to get theirs at any point in the game. They've done it against two defenses better than Wake Forest, and if they don't, obviously it's a disappointment. But I'm at the point where I trust them enough now to go do that. And defensively, I think it's the linebackers. I think whether it's Trinilius Tatum, Paul Moala, Braylon Oliver, Kyle Eford, whoever is in there at the game at any point in time, discipline is just going to be super key against this Wake Forest offense. Like I was explaining earlier, they run that slow mesh point, and they can pull it out at the last minute and hit you over the middle on an RPO or hit you deep. They can hand it off to the running back, get him on the edge. They can keep it. Quarterback can go around the corner. So Griffiths is not the most impressive of runners, but he is able to get yards on his own. Like he's not a statue back there. So linebackers, it kind of extends to the defensive line too, and being able to cause disruption and being able to stay disciplined. And that's something that they haven't done so far. They've been a step slow. They've been behind. The tackling hasn't been good at any level of the defense. So just being able to stay disciplined, get pressure, cause havoc. Those are going to be the big keys to the game. And look, if they do that, I think Georgia Tech can win this game. I'll be posting my full breakdown and position or prediction. That will be coming out tomorrow. So I'm not going to do one on the show just right yet. It's a big game. Like they really have got to win this one and bring it home, because if you don't, you're staring 1-3 in the face. Yes, you do have games against Bowling Green, Boston College, and Virginia that should be wins. But as I explained earlier, even if you get all those three and avoid being upset, which is it's not a given, like Boston College almost just beat Florida State, who is the number 4 team in the country right now. If you get all those 3 wins, you're still too short of a bowl game, and you're going to have to upset somebody like North Carolina or Miami or Clemson or Georgia, Syracuse. Like you're going to have to pull 2 big upsets, and now they get some of those teams at home. But that's a big hill to climb if you lose this game. Now, if you win, you still have a lot to work on, but you have a chance to go into October with a winning record, assuming you take care of business against Bowling Green next week, which I feel pretty confident in. And then, they'll have another measuring stick game when they play Miami, who is playing arguably as good as any team in the ACC not named Florida State. But like I said, they just almost had a hiccup against Boston College, and they play Clemson this week. So Miami is definitely in the top tier of ACC teams, and who knows, they could even wind up being the best by the end of the season. So tough schedule ahead. This is a big game. I say it till my face is blue that this is a game that Georgia Tech really needs to win, because if they lose this, and even if they lost it by a touchdown or more, I would consider that a step back. I don't think many people expected them to beat Ole Miss. Like I painted this scenario of where it's a trap game for Ole Miss, and I do still think it was. Ole Miss was only ahead by a touchdown in the fourth quarter, and with their biggest game of the season against Alabama this weekend, you could have saw how it was going to be a trap game. But I don't think anybody expected them to win that game. Even with the players Ole Miss had out, they were 17-point favorites. Georgia Tech almost covered that, and not a lot of people expected them to beat Louisville, and frankly, they probably should have. They let that game get away from them. Wake Forest has not played anybody up to this point, and they're still a well-coached football team. I have a ton of respect for what Dave Clawson has done at Wake Forest, because it's one of the hardest jobs in the entire Power Five, and he's got it to a point where they expect to make bowl games every year. He's had to replace defensive coordinators like Mike Elko and other. He's had to replace a lot. He's had to replace quarterbacks. Talented wide receivers. A.T. Perry is a very good player that is in the NFL now. Sage Surratt was a really good player that they had to replace, and they just find a way to keep doing it. So hopefully, that's the kind of program I think he wants to get the Georgia Tech to, and just in terms of consistency and being able to get to bowl games consistently. And Wake Forest in their spike years, these past couple of years, they reached the top 15 and the top 10, and that's something to really aspire to attain to. And they've done a really good job of that. So you're not just going to walk in here and walk all over them just because you played a tougher schedule or just because I think you're better than them in some areas, like especially on offense. Like they expect to win this game too, and that they're fighting to stay undefeated and make some noise. This is their first real test of the season, and I think they're anxious to see what kind of team they can have going forward. So it's not going to be easy by any stretch of imagination. I think the line is close for a reason. Um, I'll give my prediction tomorrow, but this is a big game they need to win. But that's going to wrap it up as far as preview goes. Like I said, I will have the full breakdown, position breakdown prediction for this game. Be sure if you're watching this on YouTube, give a like to the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you know whenever I got new content out. Give us my social media channels or scrolling along the bottom there. Be sure to give them a follow. And if you're listening on podcast form, if you think I need a 1-star review, leave it. If you think I need a 5-star review, I would prefer that. And also leave it. But that's going to do it for me today. Go check out everything over at allyellowjackets.com. Plenty of content coming for you guys. And I will see you next time. Thank you.